All right, here we go. So, hey everyone, happy Friday. What a crazy last week or so it's been. We're gonna wait for another couple people to trickle in until we officially launch the intro and stuff. But yeah, glad to have Nate here. How's it going, man?
It's going well, Joel. Thanks for having me, man. Good to see you again.
Yeah, no problem. It was really enjoyed our chat last time, and then I was like, oh, this guy's gonna be at the ETHDam thing, and so then there you go. Then we got to
Yeah.
meet in person, hang out a bit, and it was pretty fun because I got to we went to some like speakeasy place and got to see some interesting cocktail there, and I've already like replicated it at home because I was just like, dude, this is interesting. I want to know how to show me your magic kind of thing. And
That
so
was a great bar. Great vibe. Yeah. Yeah, it was impressive. And we had those I don't remember what that stuff was called. It started with a J but sounded like a Y. Yennefer.
yeah.
Yeah. So that was new to me. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, they're just so much like, stuff. So much like
There's a
stuff
lot of
happen.
culture there. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, I'm sure we'll dig into ETHDam on once we
Yeah.
get going. But yeah.
yeah, for sure. It was a good time, but I think I'm glad to be back and back in action, all the other good stuff. So, are you still like traveling, or you touched whatever home base is right now?
Yeah, I'm back in the States, but I will be back in Europe in like a week. I'm going to ETH Prague for all of the privacy conferences. So we've got like kind of more like a cypherpunk thing. So they got a couple side events going on there. And then there's ETH Prague, BTC Prague, DeFi Summit Prague, and like a couple little small ones. So I'm very interested to meet the people, the builders that are working in privacy. If anyone's listening to this and going to be in Prague, message me on Twitter at official
Nice.
ESC, and let's meet up.
Yeah. Did you ever get your last thing back? Your last handle
Last
back? Yeah.
No, I'm still out, but Twitter's been like messaging me like a little more consistently, but they're like, we can't prove that you're you, so like give us something. They don't really. I think Elon just nuked the support department and replaced them with bots. So I'm not hopeful that this is the way to get my handle back, but in the next couple months, if I don't have Eat Sleep Crypto back, I'm going to go sit outside of Twitter headquarters for a week and talk to everybody that goes in.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't really have you had a decent following, but it wasn't like an irreplaceably large following, you know?
It wasn't irreplaceably large, but the amount of thought leaders that I had following me was like it was so good, and it took me so long to build that up. And now it's,
Yeah.
yeah, but it definitely, either way, not make or break, but it was
It'd be
tough to
nice.
build that following.
Yeah, so if you are listening to this, follow, was it official ESC is the
Yeah, it's
handle?
official ESC. Yeah, that'll be my
Yeah.
backup from now on.
Yeah. It's well, it's your backup from now. It might just be your new one,
Might just
right?
be the main one. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
interesting.
Yeah, that's where the insights are coming for the next couple months at least. So uh, anything we talk about is, gonna become part of the thought stream that is the Eat Sleep Crypto Twitter.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, this seems like a good spot. I think we got enough people in. We should probably just hit
Great.
the intro. All right, ready? 3, 2, 1, go. So, hey everyone, officially happy Friday, just like officially ESC. I'm joined by the one and only Nate of Eat Sleep Crypto at official ESC. Follow him on Twitter, all you thought leaders out there. How's it going, man? You ready for
It's
a great
going
show?
well. Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Joel, for having me on again. It's a pleasure to speak with you, and I enjoyed so much of our conversation here on the last episode and in ETHDam in Amsterdam this last week.
Yeah, it was quite the fun time. It was a good time to get get caught up at stuff. It's kind of, the world is so small. I don't even remember where we bumped into each other online. It must have been someone randomly recommending you or something, and then you disappeared because your Twitter account disappeared. And then I went and I saw again. It's just like, oh yeah, random Twitter person who seems to know what they're talking about and say intelligent things. And then there you go. Guess what? We're both at the same conference far away, and it turned out pretty well. So I'd like to remind everyone, of course, if you have my NFTs, you're in my Discord. Leave super chats in the Digital Cash Rundown channel. I will read them. Otherwise, you're relegated to the mempool of the regular comments, where maybe I'll answer, maybe I won't. And yeah, I'll streamline the whole like NFT and acquisition process and all that at some point. I'm just like doing 1.5 million things. So it was quite the interesting time because we'll hit on ETHDam a little bit more specifically. But so last Tuesday, so like most, almost 2 weeks, a long time from now, I took off to go to ETHDam. I got there Amsterdam a little bit early. Then we had the ETHDam conference, as we'll cover. So Alexei Pertsev was there from Tornado Cash. It was kind of a surprise because he just got out of the pokey, and then there was a Tornado Cash exploit the next day, and so that's like Saturday, then that's Sunday, and then Monday I'm like, okay, I'm traveling back, and then there's all this like drama in between flights. I'm just like, oh, what happened? Oh, the Dash chain halted. Oh shit. And then so I wake up with Tuesday with kind of like a feeling like I was like Robin Williams, like, what year is it? Like coming out of the Jumanji, because like so much stuff happened. So might as well, let's see, just hit on that first one, which, because of like the news and stuff. Yeah, so the Dash network, right? Dash has been around almost 10 years. It's like next January, I think it's going to be 10 years, right? It's long in the tooth. And for the first time ever, as far as I'm aware, other than maybe in like the first 24 hours type situation, there was an actual chain halt and the network stopped producing blocks. So under this, and this is like, I've seen people going back and forth on Discord for a long time on this about like, what happened? This happened. Well, what about this? What about that? And it seems like even some of the more technically minded people are still confused about what happened. And like, I think I understand exactly what happened to the limit of my understanding. I'd have to spend years more studying, consensus and things like that, and like to really understand. But basically, the TLDR, the issue was related to the upgrade of our BLS signature scheme from a non-standard scheme to a new standard scheme used by the industry. It's worth noting that when we introduced BLS threshold cryptography to our network in 2018, there was no defined standard. This upgrade is vital to our path of inter-blockchain communication, meaning Dash is coming out very soon. I've been saying that for years, but whatever. With the Evolution platform, and as such, it's kind of like a side chain with a whole different data platform that interacts with the main kind of Bitcoin-based L1. And so it's kind of, it's not exactly like a perfect L2, but it's basically, there's a lot of interoperability between the two chains. This little upgrade made some snafu. Basically what happened was a miner, from my understanding, right, there's a list of masternodes out there, because masternodes do extra stuff even on the first layer, right? They secure transactions. They decide which blocks that the miners produced are valid based on the first seen rule, right? They pick the first one, say, yep, that's it. And so a masternode went offline or like disappeared very soon before this thing happened, which is a kind of an edge case. And then now the masternode list was invalid, and so the whole consensus thing got messed up. And a single miner started to mine on the zombie chain, on this like zombie chain, and then everything just like stopped and couldn't continue because they weren't building on valid blocks; they're building on invalid blocks. And so they patched it. I don't remember exactly how long, because I was in the air the entire time basically, but it was like within 18 hours, I think it was fully working. I just remember the Tuesday following, right, the day after I woke up, everything was fixed, but I did have to go around and like message a whole bunch of people, like wallets and other providers, being like, "Hey, a thing happened. Here's what you should do." So I don't know if you were you exposed? Were you even aware of any of this kind of stuff happening over the last week?
I was today years old when I found out about the Dash Halt. You mentioned it, and I was like, "Oh wow!" Like this. I mean, to me, this light started flashing. I was like, "Wow!" Like this is another exploit in the same week, right? Of a sort of an edge case of in this case, a layer one protocol and not a smart contract. But what's interesting to me is this is more of an economic security edge case, or maybe let's call it a system design edge case rather than a technical edge case or exploit. And those are the kinds of things that attract my attention. But no, I hadn't heard about it until you told me.
Yeah.
Some
consensus rule issues, and it gets like really into the weeds above like I would call myself basically technical if you call it like basic architectural understanding from like a high level view. But whenever you get into like, Merkle roots of things and like that's when I'm like, I'm out of my element here. So it appears to be, from what I'm being told, it appears that if this exploit would have very much, or I'm not sure if exploit's the right word, but if this issue would never have been discovered under almost every single circumstance. It's just that weird coincidence of events. And so it might be a good thing that it did get discovered, because if a major miner had picked it up and started mining on this out of consensus chain, it could have just made the entire network like, not just like, oh, we had a little halt, we're back online, never mind, everything's good. But it could have been like now we have like a real consensus problem where there's like an actual split, and it's not like proof of work, where proof of work's a lot more just straight proof of work, I should say, where it's a lot more malleable, where you can have like, oh, there's a chain here, and consensus follows like the most proof of work. And so you could have disagreements and forks, and then they can kind of snap back into consensus. It's more like there's the masternode system sitting above it, like locking in the official one, so you can't 51% attack the chain, which is a fantastic feature. But then when you start having like this weird zombie chain that they won't do, and now you can't build other blocks this way, now it's just like this weird thing where it could have been a lot worse, I guess. And supposedly there was no real way to experience this bug in a testnet environment, really. Although, again, a lot of this is what I'm being told secondhand too, because, again, this is kind of crazy.
Yeah, it seems like an edge case of the first block finality, and one that you wouldn't necessarily discover unless you were fuzzing all of the parameters and trying to get every possible configuration of the Dash network pre-upgrade, which is like a rare event in itself. So that's interesting. It makes me wonder how many other kinds of edge cases might there be that we haven't discovered yet. Not to imply that there are any, it's just a genuine curiosity. And I think it's a question that many blockchain communities prefer to avoid.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing it is kind of also like underscores some interesting stuff where we're in some, I still really like the Bitcoin design because it was so like elegant, and not without its problems over the years on a technical level, not without its exploits, but it's just like almost 15 years of just working through that code base, that basic code base. And then it's just kind of simple. Then, of course, you have the ETH world, which is also known as the exploit world, because there's exploits everywhere. But it's still, now like Dash has been very reliable over the years because of its basic like Bitcoin style structure plus some extra sauce on top. But now it's moving into, a loosely Cosmos based sidechain for like a data contract platform with like decentralized file storage called GroveDB and all this. Like, it's getting into this like not even just ETH copy world, but like a different thing entirely. And more importantly, it's not just doing that too. It's marrying that with the main number one proof of work plus chain, right?
Hmm.
It's so I hate to be like spreading FUD because I don't. That's not really what I do, especially not about Dash. But like, I have a feeling that there's going to be a lot of these kinds of There's going to be capacity for a lot of these kinds of issues to crop up over the next year as we start to like, right the ship. As we start to just kind of like with Ethereum's transition to proof of stake, which is a very simple change, right? But at the same time, super involved and just yeah. So I like the Dash guarantee of like everything just works super well. I'm kind of expecting to put that on hold for the next couple years to just be like, yeah, it's just probably gonna break, and I'm just gonna have another couple coins to pay for my stuff just in case, because yeah, who knows?
Well, I'm a little more hopeful for Dash actually than that. I might be.
Well,
I wonder if I'm a little more optimistic, but I will say with Ethereum, this is why Ethereum deployed the merge on several test nets before putting it to mainnet, and why we were all, literally we had in San Diego, we threw a party, ETHSD threw a party for the merge. So we all went out to a bar, there were 50, 60 people there, and we were like, yes, it worked. Like, got really stoked, and as San Diegans do. And we were just like, really impressed at this feat of engineering. The comparison was swapping an airplane engine in midair.
yeah.
And I think that's not to pat the developers on the back too much, but like it was really, really impressive what they pulled off with the merge. And to as far as exploits on ETH, I will defend my home turf a little bit because I am deeply invested in the Ethereum world as a,
Of course.
kind of like I guess a consultant to a lot of developers. And is that I think to clarify, the exploits are mostly at the smart contract level. If you want to say MEV is an exploit at the protocol level, that's fair. It's a hotly debated topic, but I would say ETH itself is relatively free of exploits. Even if we go back as far as the DAO, that was an issue with the smart contract and not the base layer.
Well, yeah, that's exactly it, because ETH kind of pushed a lot of it. Most of its activity is in contracts, and the contracts are kind of full of stuff. But yeah, I'm definitely optimistic about Dash. That's for sure. I just I'm a little bit realistic because instead of it changing the jet engine in the middle of flight, it's more like in the middle of the space shuttle flight, attaching the fuel tank and rockets as well.
Right.
So it's not even. It's like tripling the aircraft size in mid-flight with, like, you have like a turboprop plane, and then you're merging it into like a 747 with like that. It's like it's little freaky, and like a lot of this stuff hasn't been done before. It's not like some of it has, some of it hasn't. And the thing is, so this is the first up. This was, I think, Dash Core version 19, or now 19.1 is the patch version, but that's the core protocol, just like Bitcoin Core, right? And that's a precondition for the I guess the feature complete MVP of the Evolution platform, because it's like two things have to be created at the same time, and then they have to interact. It's not just the chain does this. It's just like as if ETH, POW, and POS both hung around and had to interact with each other. It's kind of like, and so the idea is within the next, I don't know, I'm not good at timelines, but within not too long from now, there will be the release candidate will be on testnet, and then we have 2 months of testing to make sure that it's like iron out all the bugs until it launches on mainnet. And I have to say, 2 months, it seems like the minimum viable testing period, because I just know that there's gonna be a lot of stuff to break in the meantime. But I think it's gonna get done, right? I think maybe July or August we start to have something really cool to play around with for us mainnetters. But yeah, here's hoping, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'd be optimistic about. Well, I guess I would say I'm hoping that the there are no secondary consequences of this particular merge, and that's what I thought you were saying. But it sounds like you're saying Dash is adding many more features in the next couple months, and we're expecting some of those things to break. And I would say, yeah, I mean that's the nature of it's the nature of adding features and with while there is still technical debt.
Yeah, that's because you got like data, like you got a data chain, a side chain that has to have like a trustless bridge between Dash and platform credits, and then you got to do data contracts, which are similar to smart contracts, but don't have smart contracts yet, but they may by the end of the year, early next year, have something put in there, and then also a data storage solution that like stores actual data as well. And so all those components together is going to be crazy. But yeah, let's hit on ETHDam because that was a good time. Yeah. So
sure. Yeah, we can jump into that.
The tweet thing I mentioned is just Eleanor posting a picture of a bunch of us. There's still a few pictures that like you're in and stuff that just haven't been released yet. I guess people are just too busy doing stuff. But she said, "Incredible meeting of the minds at ETHDam, brimming with optimism and hope for a better future with privacy and freedom at the forefront. Thanks everyone." Blah blah blah. And so to which I kind of added that I left ETHDam with a warm, happy glow in my heart and a sadness that I had to go back home, which doesn't usually happen because I like where I live, right? Yeah. This is the Crypto Canal family is some of the best, sweetest, and most hardworking, genuine people in all of crypto. And I do believe that, right? I mean, they were good. It was a good time, huh? What are your some of your impressions?
Man, I just felt like that is a great encapsulation of what we were experiencing and on your tweet, and then Eleanor's example or encapsulation of what the goal of ETHDam is and what the goal of crypto is. I just felt like ETHDam was so aligned with what we're trying to do in crypto, and that stood out to me. But I knew that because Eleanor and I go back like 5 or 6 years to the Bitcoin Cash days from the very beginning of that. And that. But what struck me was just how much of a family there is in Amsterdam of crypto developers. It was like unreal to see. And Amsterdam itself, this was my first time there. And so I was doubly impressed by the culture of this city. But, ETHDam really has something special in the community. And it was awesome to be a part of that for the weekend. I'm definitely going next year.
Yeah, for sure. I haven't planned that far ahead, but one thing that has made me kind of consider, I think it was one of those perfect conferences in that like it's really hard these days to have like a good United Crypto conference because in the early days it was always Bitcoin conferences and then just all the other projects came in under the Bitcoin conference umbrella. And then all that stuff kind of migrated to ETH conferences as the maxis became maxi and started becoming super purist. And so, but then a lot of ETH stuff, like the ETH world a lot of it is very technical or like pumpy stuff or NFTs or just
sure.
And I'm not dissing NFTs as a whole, but like a lot of the NFT style weirdness.
I don't mind. Yeah, I don't mind dissing NFTs as a whole. Yeah. Let's be real. Like 99.9%
just not mine.
NFTs
But you buy mine and then diss the rest. How about that? That's the way
you're
it works.
The 0.1%.
Yeah. So this is a rare conference in that it seemed like pure as far as like the goals, the focus, and then the people. And you had a lot of good people I met from all kinds of different projects. Love the Railgun guys, of course. Some people in the Zcash community. Someone from Thorchain/ThorSwap was there. That was fun to talk to. Of course, in that picture, Amin from SpankChain, Sir Spank himself was there. And it's just like a very fun, positive environment where when Justin gave his keynote or his talk, he basically, for lack of a more couth way of saying, he basically took a dump on the business model of a lot of the sponsors of the conference by basically just saying it. But despite that, no one got like offended and stormed out. No one did anything. And people just respectfully, a lot of them agreed, and those who didn't stuck around in the hallway and just chatted with him friendly for a couple hours afterwards. Really great environment. And that sort of inspired me because at some point next year, probably like next somewhere between the late spring and the late fall, I'll probably organize a conference in New Hampshire that will be killer. And I want to give myself like a year so I can make sure it's like tight. Digital Cash Fest 2024. Write it down. Right, it's gonna happen.
Nice.
And
Looking forward to that.
Yeah, I mean, Eleanor and Justin have already agreed to speak at it, so there you go. That's
great.
Doesn't even exist. But I love talking about things that don't exist yet and promising the moon.
Welcome to crypto. Yeah, that's I loved Justin's I like Justin's attitude in general. Justin is like a friend of truth. Like he just it doesn't matter if it's politically incorrect or if it's like going to step on some toes. If the project is like clearly moving the wrong direction in his opinion, he's going to call it out. And that's what I appreciate so much about him. He compromises for no one. I think he comes in with some of his own biases and his own ideas, but he is so open to dialogue. And yeah, so it was great. I mean, ETHDam, it was great talking with Justin, and maybe we get into that in a bit because he has some different thoughts around diverging thoughts around governance and you know, these economic security exploits and things, which we talked about. But
yeah,
it was great.
So ETHDam was kind of dedicated to privacy, specifically because Tornado Cash and its, I guess, principal dev or figurehead, Alex Pertsev, was arrested in Amsterdam like last August or something, and not too long ago he was really like a week before the conference maybe he was released while awaiting trial, which as far as I've been told has been pushed back to next year. So that's pretty terrible. He's just got to like do that. But he showed up at the conference, which was a surprise kind of appearance, and then his lawyer gave a presentation about, you know, arguing his case. And so obviously as a privacy focus, I know, like, for example, the Railgun guys are working on something I would say in a lot in the same domain as Tornado Cash, although probably superior. But we're comparing things, but it's kind of a brave move for all of them to just come out there. I mean, especially after someone very similar to their job description just, you know, got in trouble. And then the very next day, we had an exploit, right, on Tornado Cash, which was kind of, but it was kind of a interesting thing. Let's just hit on that real quick. Because again, we're going into other stuff that's like a lot over my head, but leave it to Kieran of Tornado Cash, Kieran, whatever you want to call him. He just said, a malicious attacker has attacked Tornado Cash governance. Here's how it happened. And this thread, so if you want to, let's see, his handle is MESQUKA. So if you follow him there, Miskuka. If you want to follow him there, you can kind of read the whole thing. But basically, the attacker found an exploit, found a way to basically mint more votes for themselves, an overwhelming amount of votes, and then just passed like legitimate proposals to like take the money from the DAO. And since they had the votes to do it, because they did it, they just kind of could. And so since then, an anonymous person has patched the thing. And yeah, it's interesting. So it's a sad day for Tornado Cash, but at least it got fixed, and it was live fixed. It's like I come in on like Saturday morning or Sunday morning, I guess. I come in, and then people are like, "Did you hear what happened?" It's like this buzz, and then a couple hours later, there's like, "Oh yeah, it got fixed. It got fixed." It's like, okay, wow, that's kind of a whirlwind for me.
Yeah, and it got fixed. The attacker did drain the Torn from the treasury, but they're not able to access the funds because those are owned in a separate contract that's not affected by the governance, as far as I can tell. So I'm a little more technical on the Ethereum side, so I was able to follow most of Kyron's post, his thread there, which was very informative. There were two things that stuck out to me, besides maybe three things. The first thing was this. Oh man, there's so many things. I followed up with Kyron about this, and I asked him. I said, "Okay, what's the situation here?" And he's like, maybe Amin told me that this is not. I asked, "Is this going to be common for other protocols, and are other protocols also at risk? So Kyron had fielded some questions. Is Railgun at risk of this? And the answer is no. Tornado Cash was built before there were primitives that had protections from these kinds of attacks for on-chain voting. So other types of contracts are not subject to this kind of attack by and large. There are definitely, I'm sure there are some that have structured their voting process in a similar way and maybe went through the same steps as Tornado Cash developers did. But this is a relatively early contract, and the attacker apparently has just found out now how to exploit this type of architecture. And that led to sort of my next question, which was, well, did they really just find out how to do this, or had somebody been keeping this in their back pocket to deploy at the exact time when Alex Pertsev was scheduled to speak on Tornado Cash? I find that awfully coincidental. And so I asked Kyron about this, and he said, this attacker shows the telltale signs of someone who has no idea what they're doing. And a couple of the examples
I would say a small idea what they're doing, because they did.
Yeah. Right. They have a very, that's a good point. I'm glad you disclaimed that. But
compared to Kai, maybe didn't know what they're doing. But
and I'm probably putting words in his mouth, because Kai wouldn't make a blunder that silly. But my point is, and what Kai was relaying to me is, this attacker doesn't actually look so much like a professional. He said they mixed their funds with another wallet, and so the trails converged, making the attacker easier to identify. And they have now tried to go back and offer to somewhat remedy the situation, and provide, maybe it was like a measure of the funds back or something. That the attackers has since gone on to try to, change things in the protocol so it can go back to normal. And both of those strike me as something that let's say a state level actor or something would not be.
They wouldn't be doing.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts about that? Did you come to the same conclusion? Like, were you thinking, who did this exploit?
No, I wasn't. I wasn't really thinking too much into that, but it does make sense that some sort of like an amateur would do. The thing is, I think we all have to realize is at this point in crypto as a whole, we're on this, like, everything's kind of on shaky ground. Like, just the fact that, like, Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin SV could both be 51% attacked to oblivion at any point, and then no one really cares. And then SV actually did get 51% attacked to oblivion a couple times, and they just just wait for it to be over and go back to business. So they haven't fixed it. Like, just the fact that we're at that stage means there's a lot of stuff kind of like hanging out there. I think that as far as like the state actor angle, I think that first of all, the state actors are probably gonna first move in the way that they know how, which is just like sanction things. Like, the sanctioning is very in line with what a state actor would do, and then arrest some guy to scare everyone, right? That kind of makes sense. Next level, I don't think they do no offense to this whole situation, but like petty exploits like that. I think that they would find ways of like bringing down or capturing a chain entirely, or destroying a contract, or finding a way to dox everyone without showing their work, so that people don't know exactly how it happened. Now they're scared to use it. There would be probably, if they got to the point where they need to do their research and hired the best people, it'd probably look a little bit different than it does. So, I mean, the timing thing, who knows? It could be, it could be, who knows if it's like a competitor, right? Trying to be like, or someone who has a financial interest in knocking out one of the more known popular privacy protocols out there. And so one thing for damn sure, it's not the Railgun guys, because they're so much more competent than that. So, and also they're nice people. They would do something like that. But I'm just saying, beyond that, who knows? But yeah, it's an interesting thing to kind of see happen. And it's not like, from my understanding, from what others have told me, in other words, the Tornado Cash has not seen nearly as much usage since the sanctions. Like it's effectively been like cut down. Is that kind of what your impression is too?
Yeah, totally. I mean, all of my friends that had funds in Tornado Cash have stopped using it and instantly just were like, well, I guess I'm out, however much for from Tornado getting on the OFAC list. So I definitely think its use has been curtailed significantly. And that's an interesting point that you bring up of this, that it might be a competitor. And that makes me start thinking about like all of the varied incentives for competing protocols to find these exploits in each other's protocols. And there's a lot of game theory that starts going into this, because we are in this crypto world where there should be, doesn't always feel like, but should be a high security preference. There should be a very high level of threat model to a lot of these protocols, because we assume, and I'll use Dash as an example here, if we assume that these protocols are going to exist forever and there's no law that's preventing people from attacking them if an attack is possible, then we should expect eventually all possible attacks to play out against every blockchain if these things are immutable and there are no extra protocol consequences to attacking.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's kind of like the first part, like the rabbit hole. That's the thing, is like a lot of cryptos have prioritized kind of different things. And like, for example, we all know, I mean, we don't know if we all know, but we should all know that Bitcoin doesn't have a sustainable security model in the long term right now, without the block size growing or something else doing, or some other exogenous form of security. But people are like, it's going to be fine. It's like, how are you like that? Or, I mean, to a certain extent, although Ethereum's much easier to build L2s on, it's much easier to settle, like all that, but it's still kind of, it's still kind of messed up, I think, that, and those are like the big safe players. And then you go down the list of like, Solana breaks 1 million times and is centralized and all, and like everyone's like, we're going to the spot, and this is one of those things. It's like a frustration where people talk about like fundamentals and stuff. Like most cryptocurrencies have almost no privacy, and then most have almost no security or transaction finality. And so, like for example, with the way Monero works, and Monero is one of the good ones, by the way. We're really rummaging at the bottom of the barrel there, but like, when you're trying to spend Monero, from my understanding, but it does make sense based on the architecture.
Not that I've ever spent Monero or anything.
Yeah, of course. I have on a few things, but I've never done the repeat transaction. I've just paid for something and then like a while, like a few weeks later, maybe paid for it again. But supposedly, and I've encountered an earlier version of Dash's instant transaction functionality had the same outcome as this. But basically with Monero, you can't respend your UTXOs right away, your change.
Right.
So if I send you I send you a transaction, it's like a block of coins. Whatever you don't get, I get. And then I can't just make a second payment. I got to wait. And that's like, no one's going to do that in the real world. But, obviously we have some time to figure out like a way to kind of figure that out. Then, of course, the 51% attack problems, all these things, all these exploits, the age of exploits has not even begun, right? We're now, like, the fact that you could just do a little ordinal or BRC20 thing on Bitcoin and just wreck the whole ecosystem, like over a course, like for not that much money, I guess. The fact that you can just still do that shows how early we are. And I think that starting this next bull cycle, we're going to start to get enough attention on the space that the following bear cycle is going to be the wrecked cycle, like the chain wrecked, in my opinion.
Yes, 100%. I've been saying for the last year or so, we have seen almost none of the economic security attacks that are available. And this next 5 years or so will be defined by economic security. I actually specifically tweeted last I don't know, November or October or so, that 2023 will be defined by economic security exploits. And if that was on Eat Sleep Crypto, it's gone for now. But if it's on official ESC, I'll retweet it. But the idea is like technical exploits are something that we're familiar with. Developers are comfortable identifying a reentrancy attack or identifying a bug in the code where some obscure function was used instead of a standard function from some known library. But economic security exploits are different. So a technical security exploit comes from a bug in the code. An economic security exploit comes from the bug in the incentives or in the system design. And
There's
those
a
are the
lot of
kinds
both
of
to go
things.
around. But the economic bugs are not really sussed out that much. People kind of ignore them. It's crazy.
Right, because it takes a different kind of mind to find those, I think, and the kind of people that are developing and auditing even are technically minded, whereas the kind of people exploiting these economic security vulnerabilities are systems thinkers or are maybe a little more business minded, even though they're hackers that are exploiting a system. It's like the idea that most hacks are not from, oh, this is a great example or parallel. Most hacks come from the social engineering in a company, not from exploiting some kind of hole in the code. And that's what I think we're about to learn in crypto.
What do you mean specifically by social engineering in this context?
So like the idea, corporate espionage is maybe a good parallel for what we were talking about with Tornado Cash, if that in fact was done by some competitor, and not to name names, but we said it's probably not Railgun because they were all there and they're good guys and they don't have as poor OPSEC as the Tornado Cash exploiter did. But corporate espionage in the traditional finance or in Web 2 or whatever world you want to say is like someone goes and instead of hacking the the database and getting like doing some SQL injection to get the entire contents of a database, they're going to the security guard, giving him $1,000 and saying, "Let me walk around for 2 hours," and then downloading the contents manually from inside Facebook or whatever it is. That's the kind of idea of a socially engineered attack rather than a technical attack. And I think we're going to see the same thing in crypto.
Yeah, I mean that's absolutely true, and that's another going back to what Justin Bonds was saying. He made an interesting point because for me I just saw that scaling didn't happen on L1 because it wasn't like a DAO, right? But then with ETH, it's like, oh well, ETH is doing a different thing, but then they ended up going towards this like, we're not really scaling kind of approach. And he made a very interesting point about the incentives, the money behind things. And so when it's just like, anyone can do what they want, but money still talks, and where's the money go, and how do people vote? And that kind of ended up being like an on-chain, like an off-chain attack on Ethereum and Bitcoin. And I think that like for example, economic incentives are, in my opinion, just like about everything. And the thing is, one thing I'd really like to have a conversation with, obviously Justin about, but like other people too, is it seems like the flowchart the governance flowchart is, first off, centralization doesn't work. That's kind of the premise of Bitcoin. And then just kind of like nothing also doesn't work because nothing will create something and perverse incentives will come in and capture the thing. And that's kind of like Bitcoin and then later Ethereum is kind of thing. So Justin's at the point of, so we need self-funding on-chain and a DAO. And sure, yes. But I have reservations about having participated in a DAO and then other functions like that over, 7 years straight now, like a lot of experience in this. I've kind of its DAOs end up to a certain extent becoming like a government in that you have people voting for capital allocation, and it doesn't present efficient outcomes.
Right.
And then
Because those participants are not paid directly for allocating capital efficiently the way that capitalism and VCs are for example, compensated for allocating capital well. Fund managers are compensated, like Justin, are compensated for allocating capital well. And there's an alignment of incentives there that doesn't exist in most governance. And Justin and I actually have been debating this for quite some time.
Yeah.
And it's the idea of governance versus what Amin actually calls ungovernance. And so there's kind of I think there's a few schools of thought. It's like there's governance through a voting scheme. There's also governance through, like, token holders are maybe incentivized to vote in certain ways if and only if revenues are accruing to them, right? Because if you have a token holder governance, but no money is going to token holders if they vote correctly, then there's a misalignment and someone is just going to buy up the tokens in order to serve their own interests. And, Shapeshift basically has that system by design, and they're allowing anyone to steer the DAO in whichever direction we'd like to go, as long as number go up of our token, then you can, sure, here's our entire, our sacred cow, slaughter it if you like, but at least pay us off. I think that's suboptimal, but it's a governance model. And then what Justin is advocating is more of, how can we codify governance into an L1 so that we can move it in the right direction? And what's the way to pay people for moving a layer one in the right direction? And so he and I have been debating this idea of, like, is governance possible on chain, and how do we align the incentives of these people? And I'm more of the school of thought, a little more on Amin's page of ungovernance, like he's demoed and showcased with Reflexer and Rye. But I actually take it to a further extreme. I think Amin's idea of having a controller in the Rye, it's a fork of Maker, or is a fork of Dai, I think that is not sustainable, in that you still have to hard code an algorithm.
Yeah.
And so what Justin and I are kind of going back and forth on, and what we were debating over ETHDam, is I don't know that governance is possible through voting. I think it has to be, going back to your idea of incentives and money, I think it has to be through markets. And that's what I'm focused on with tokenomics, is how can we codify these incentive structures so that they're all aligned, so that we have incentive compatibility or economic security, or whatever language we're using to describe this alignment of incentives. How do we do that so that we don't actually need to have someone appointed to control the protocol? Because if we do, that person becomes a trusted third party, right? If they're doxxed, then they're, potentially going to be have some undue pressure on them to change the protocol in certain ways. And if they're not doxxed, then there's no accountability, unless there is a direct economic incentive for them to do the best possible thing long term.
So when you have a DAO, like where you have money to be allocated for protocol development, you get the people who win are the people who make the case for that they're the best allocation of those funds, and that's better than nothing. It's incomplete.
Is
though.
it?
Well, I mean,
let's talk about Dash and the Treasury and how that's, I think Venezuela. I won't launch into it yet, but if you want to go there, we can.
Yeah, I mean that ended up being just like people voted for things that looked good and didn't really, Although I would argue that a lot of the 2017 bull run mega Uber pump had something to do with hype surrounding that. So
I would see that. Yeah,
that's the thing that's really sketchy, right? Is obviously stakeholders voting sounds good, right? People who are invested in the project vote. Then there was two problems, right? One, and I have some ideas on how to solve one, but I haven't quite figured out the other. And this is stuff I'd love to like hash out with like lots of other people. But the one thing is, people view it as free money, and if it's free money, there's no incentive to make smart spending decisions. And the other problem, and that can be relatively easy to figure out, in that, at least, for example, in the Dash case, the treasury every month is created from nothing. And if it's not created, then it has the effect of making the coin supply more scarce because the coins are never created. However, I would like an idea, and I didn't come up with this, but some others in the community have been pushing for it, to still create the treasury regardless, but if it doesn't get spent, it just gets redistributed to the masternode. So then they actually see the money that they're saving. They actually see their savings, so they understand they're spending their own money, which right now it's more abstract to understand. Yeah.
This is perfect example of economic security or like incentive compatibility, right? Is like then the masternodes have an interest in things not passing.
Yes, they have an interest in things not passing, and to a certain extent, they have an interest in things passing because if there's no development funding, their coin goes to zero. But it's just that's like at the end of the line. The problem is like the in between of the line is how will you profit from your decisions? And there is a sort of inbuilt incentive, which is the value of your token goes up. However, we're in this weird situation where who the hell knows why coins go up or down? Who can predict? It's not granular enough to be like, well, we made this smart development decision, therefore we profited. And so what I would like to see is obviously to make the L1 work, the L1 has to produce fees, and it would be interesting to see like the right now though, I think the economic system is kind of a little bit broken because the fees aren't anything on anything other than Ethereum and a little bit Bitcoin, right? They're just nothing. So if, for example, let's just for the Dash example, the master network was making a lot in fees, and you're like, oh well, let's do this other thing which will bring new revenue in, and then they start to see fees come in from their smart choices, then they're like, oh, okay, that worked. We see this DApp or this whatever, this thing built on this use case that we explicitly funded the devs to build. We see that generated revenue in our own pockets, and that makes it a little bit more clear. So that might be the kind of solution, but in terms of like other things, like for example, investing in a company or something like that, or building a company, if there's a way to distribute profits or equity or whatever to the voters based on the vote they do, that would be interesting. But then of course you can start trying to buy people off, and who the hell knows with that. So we get into an interesting rabbit hole, don't we?
Right. Yeah. There's moral hazard that appears. I think this is the definition. This is in essence the problems of economic security. And one other I would point out is the Oracle problem, because who's to say that there was a certain thing that happened as a result of something else? It's like there's no in that situation, there's no real way to tell unless you you have a trusted third party appointed, and there are different Oracle schemes and things like that. But yeah, I mean, all considerations. This is why I'm part of the ungovernance camp, or like, I say tokenomics is far better than governance as a system of codified incentives, which are the arena that both are competing on.
And it's very tricky to get right, for sure. That's the other thing is like we're talking about physical exploits versus economic exploits. Economic exploits have, in my view, and like we're coming up towards the end of the show really quick, so we can't get beyond on this too long, maybe not this time, but they have to be kind of seen further out. Like people are seeing the block reward of Bitcoin going down while fees are not going up to match. That's something that has to be talked about now, because an exploit, you just exploit it and the whole thing goes down tomorrow, so you fix it. But these kinds of things of like, well, but there's not enough developers doing this because the incentives aren't there, and like, how do you do this? And like, the Lightning Network is starting to centralize. Like, why? Because anyone can open a channel, and it's like, well, you start to see the economics of, if I want to have a decentralized Lightning Network, I need 3 times the funds in channels than if I just had one big ass pot, this hub, and and like the money talks. But I wrote about the Lightning Network and why it can't scale and remain decentralized. That was the title of the article from 2019 or so on eatsleepcrypto.com. But these are examples of what I call externalities in economics. There is someone who pays the cost of something that they didn't
get the benefits of, or vice versa, gets the benefit of something they didn't pay the costs for. And so I call these economic or tokenomic externalities. And these are the two classes of issues that we tend to see in economic security.
Yeah, that's for sure. All right, so it seems like a great place to start wrapping this thing up. Shill-o'clock. Oh, I don't know if you checked the time.
Shill-o'clock.
It's shill-o'clock.
It's just about, it's shill 30, so let's go.
Yeah, shill 57, more specifically. But what do you got to shill? Where can people follow you? What do you want to promote, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, I'll just show my Twitter for now. I've got some things in the works that I think people are going to be very interested to see. And I won't say more than that, but the next time I'm on your podcast, I will be showing this project. But for now, it's at official ESC on Twitter. And you can find me there, tune into the insights, and engage. Feel free to send me a message there if any of these thoughts resonate with you.
All right, I just dropped the handle in the live chats just so people know in case they can't just be like, they can't get it. But all right, so thanks very much for being on. This is a fun show, a lot of fun stuff to recap, a lot of fun other stuff coming up right next on this channel, but not on this same link. So go to the other one, is the Zcash podcast, where Zuko is going to come on, talk about the electric coin companies restructuring, governance proposals, and how to move forward, and just a lot of other fun stuff. Be sure to tune into that one. Thanks everyone for watching. I believe Paul from Edge might be on next week for the Digital Cash Rundown, so tune into that because he's a great guy. All right, thanks everyone for watching. See you either in like 2 minutes or next week. Bye-bye, everyone.